Hello, I'm audible. Welcome you all on the behalf of Dynamic Foundry Group and Quality Consultant Bangalore to this webinar, 67th webinar by Dynamic Foundry Group, and it is on ISO 9001 2015. Very importantly, this webinar is basically we are conducting because normally what happens, we focus on ISO only once in a year when we have an audit of either certification audit or we have a recertification audit basically. So we are not focusing it on day-to-day basis. So the intention of this webinar is to give focus on this topic on in our regular day-to-day basis activities, so that we can implement most of the things in our daily report, daily working style, so that it will not be a different activity. We normally do different activities, one for ISO, one for regular our working. So to avoid it and to make it, we can say synchronization of the work, it is very important that we should implement it in our regular daily basis, and that is why we are conducting this webinar. So we have today Mr. GN Sridhar from Quality Consultant Bangalore. He is a wide experience in quality QMS, quality control, and various aspects of that. So he will be guiding us on this particular aspect. I welcome Mr. Sridhar and I request him to start the webinar.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sandeep. Yeah, hope the slide is visible. Can you see the slide?
Yeah, slide is, you're audible and slide is also.
No, okay. Yeah, good evening. Welcome once again. Wish you happy Dasara. To start with, the reason why I put this slide is just to show that it starts with an input and output ends with the customer. So all the process, all your activities has to go through all these activities of documentation, control, training. That is how the things work. Now, before I start, let me introduce myself. I think many of you, you know me. I'm also a mechanical engineer. Worked for more than 33 years in various companies. Worked in BEML, Mysore. Then I worked in Autoliv, IFB, Bangalore, G Medical Systems, Bangalore, Satyam, again Bangalore, L&T, Bangalore, then Moog Aerospace. So worked in all the domains, filed a couple of patents, written some articles, did some Six Sigma projects and other things. What we are doing is also a community development program. We adopted a school in our village and we are giving them interest-free loans for studying. Then we are giving scholarship. That is to help the students to study further. So that is what we are doing to give back to the society. This is in short. Now, what we will covering today is, we will see a little bit on ISO 9000:2015, that's the new standard. Then we will go clause by clause, even though we cannot cover all the clauses because of the lack of time, because we hardly have about 1 to 1.5 hours maximum. So within that time, we will try to see some of the clauses, main clauses, and some of the highlights of those clauses as to what we have to do, what we are doing, is it okay or not okay. Then one case study of continuous improvement in Foundry, step-by-step procedure, how to implement this system in a Foundry. It is not only for Foundry, as a matter of fact, it is the same for any type of industry. But since it is organized by a Foundry group, I have taken the example from the Foundry. Otherwise, it is all the same. The standards are the same across the industry. You can stop me anytime, you can ask me any questions you want, or you can keep it to the end and you can ask me later, either way. Start with ISO 9000:2015. What is the standard? ISO standard tells us what to do, but not how to do. So how to do is left to the individuals, left to the companies. How do you want to structure your quality systems? How you want to structure your QMS, then your documents and all. It is up to you, up to the companies to standard. But the standard tells you what has to be done, what has to be documented, and how you have to document the required information. That's what the standard says. Now coming to ISO 2015 standard, what has changed? The nine main clauses in the standard. The main clauses in the standard, it's adoption of the high level structure in the annex SL. Then it talks about the risk-based thinking that is extra additional to this in 2015. Then it has got few prescribed requirements. Unlike 2008 standard, the number of requirements are very less. Matter of fact, very few. In this standard, the requirement defines the boundaries of the QMS. So you can define your boundary. There's no hard and fast rule what has to be done. Improved applicability for services, less emphasis of documentation. In earlier standard, there were 6 mandatory documents. Now there are no mandatory documents. Then increased emphasis of organization context, leadership requirements, and desired outcomes. Sorry. These are some of the main changes in your new standard of ISO 9001:2015. The high level view of the changes. Now there are 10 sections. It is standardized across the standard. For all standards, it is ISO is the base standard. So you have 10 sections instead of 8, which was there in the previous version. The 10 standards are the scope, normative references, and terms and definitions are the same. There is no change. The changes are from clause number 4, context of the organization. Then it is leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and improvement. This is how it is structured. So clause 4 to 10, it is realigned and the titles are changed. Maybe the intent of the standard is the same. It is almost same. There is not much of a change, but it is rearranged and a lot of additional points have been added. Now these clauses are arranged in PDCA order. So that is plan, do, check, and act. In the plan phase, you have clause number 4, 5, 6, 7, which comes under planning stage. And you have do, that is under do, you have operations. Then under check, you have performance and evaluation. Under act, you have improvement. So all these clauses starting from 4 to 10 are arranged in PDCA. And what you do in each phase, plan, do, check, act, is this. In plan stage, what you do is investigate the current situation, understand fully the nature of the problem being solved. And in the do stage, you enlighten the team to real problem, analyzing the data and defining the implementation solution. That is, you carry out the activities. Then once you carry out the activities, you check what you have done is okay or not okay. That is in your check phase. Then in the act phase, if it is okay, go forward. If it is not okay, start again with your PDCA cycle. So this is how your plan, do, check, act cycle works. And this PDCA is applicable for any type of activity what you do. Be it an auditing process or be it a improvement process, be it a manufacturing process, any activity you do, you should have some sort of PDCA, plan, do, and check and act. So this is the importance what they are giving for in this standard. Now coming to the standard, what we are seeing is it has got 10 clauses, scope, normative references, terms and definitions, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are the new additions. We will go clause by clause from here onwards. So as I told you, we will not be able to cover all the clauses, but we'll see some of the clauses and the highlights of each one. Coming to terms and definitions, there are few new terms and definitions which have been added, like interested party, risk-based thinking, documented information. Under documented information, you have retained documented information and maintained documented information. Then process approach, organization knowledge. These are some of the new terms which are added. And as we go along, we'll understand what are those terms and what are the definitions, how it is used in the organization. Like that. But actually, this standard, to cover the standard, it takes almost 2 full days. Now, clause number, well, that is the first clause, that is clause number 4. Under clause number 4, you have understanding the needs and expectations. That is under context of the organization. In context of the organization, what is it important that is important is understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. And who are these interested parties? How do you identify the interested parties? What are the types of interested parties? That is, you have 2 types of interested parties. That is external interested party and internal interested party. Each organization should identify who are their interested parties, who are internal interested party and the external interested party. And some of the examples of interested parties are internal and external. Internal interested parties are unions, top management, your board of directors, suppliers, contractors. These are some of the internal interested parties. And some of the external interested parties are regulators, legislators, shareholders, media, community, consumers, etc. So the way you identify is you have to see whether the interested parties has got a stake in the organization, have they got a say in the organization, etc. Based on that, you identify them as interested party. Then you identify them as internal and external. See how what are their requirements and see in your QMS how do you address those requirements. So that is the requirement of this clause, that is contest of the organization. It's all this what we are talking, all most of the activities are one-time activities. It doesn't change. So the time involved or time what you give for this documentation is only once. People may be under the impression that it consumes a lot of time, but it doesn't consume a lot of time. Let's continue with context of the organization, the quality management system and the process. So in this clause, what you have to identify is your QMS and the process, how it interacts with each other, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what are the CPOC, that is supplier input, process, output, customer. So how do you come out with the process map and how is the interaction matrix formed? That is how each department talks to the other department. What is the interaction of each? That is what you have to determine in this clause. That whole organization sequence have to be mapped. That is called as a process approach. That is, a process is set of activities that are interrelated to interact with each other. So if you can see here, you have the customer needs, you have the customer expectations or the customer satisfaction. So in between, you have all the process which is going on inside a company. You have the main process or the core process area that is supported by management responsibility, then the measurement and monitoring control, then these are the support activities like risk, purchase, finance, and all that. So you can have your own process map in any way you want, but what has to be depicted is how each of the process talks to each other. So this is called as a process map. This is nothing but your process approach. So this has to be done in every company. You have to show this. Then once you show that this, then you'll understand how the process is mapped. Once you identify the process which is mapped, you can have the KPIs or SLAs for each of the department, each of the process, then what has to be monitored. Then once you start collecting the data to monitor them, then you can talk about improvement. So that is the purpose of having this process map. Next, it is the context of the organization. Continuing with that, it says to the extent necessary, the organization shall maintain the documented information and retain documented information. These are the two words which are new in this standard. So instead of documented information, that is split as maintain documented information and retain documented information. If you say maintain documented information, maintained means it is documents. Retain documented information means it is records. So throughout the standard, wherever you have mentioned, wherever it indicates as maintain documentation, you should have an SOP, you should have a work instruction, you should have some sort of document to show. Then wherever it says retain documented information, you should have records. Records is nothing but your filled up formats, templates, anything which is filled up has to be shown as documentary evidence. And it says to the extent necessary. So don't be under the impression that you should have a lot of documents. No, the number of documents are very minimal. You decide as to how many documents you want to show, how many documents you want to keep in order to demonstrate the QMS. What is required is say what you do by showing procedures which complies with the standards. Do what you say, that is actions with procedures, be able to prove it, that is your effectiveness, that is nothing but your records. So it is as simple as that. Rules of game are only three. ISO standard says, say what you do what you say, and whatever you say, prove it. Example, there are some of the documents which you feel that it is required. Just because a document says and asks you to do something, don't be under the impression that you have to follow the document 100% in total. You have to follow the document. You can even deviate from the document to some extent as far as it doesn't affect the conformity of the product and doesn't affect the customer. So there are ways and means of circumventing the standards or circumventing what you have written, but you will have to have a valid reason for that, and that cannot be every time. It can be on need basis. That is all. So there are just some examples which are shown. Just because the document is written that do some activity, You have to use your judgment whether it can be done or not done, or you can have a rider saying that in this case I will do it, in this case I will not do it. So rewrite your document, rewrite your procedure to suit your circumstances. That's what the standard says. Next, you talk about leadership. The next clause is leadership. Leadership is very, very important because there is no MR in this standard. There is no management representative. Instead of management representative, they expect the leadership or the top management to be responsible and accountable for all the activities. That is the reason why they have removed the MR role. So in spite of that, MR role can be there. It can be delegated to somebody to do the activities. That is different. That depends on your management structure and roles and responsibilities. What are. So the main task of the leadership is to ensure that the whole company or all the departments work as a team. So everything, whatever is there in the management or in the company has to be cascaded down to the last level as appropriate. So unless and until the top leadership takes everybody into consideration and work as a team, then the activities will not be able to function. So what is important is flow down of the process, flow down of the activities, flow down of vision statement. The vision statement of the management has to be cascaded down appropriately in terms of quality goals, metrics, your KPIs. Then accordingly, your SOPs, work instruction, all the documents should match with the company vision and mission. If that is not clear, the people will not understand what has to be done, what they're doing is right or wrong. So that is the importance of leadership. Examples, some of the activities are risk-based thinking. When you talk about what is risk-based thinking, that is new addition in this standard. Risk-based thinking is nothing but it is a mindset to proactively improve the certainty of achieving the outcome utilizing a strategy. It considers threats and opportunities. So in risk-based thinking, you have to choose an objective, assess the capability, whether it is okay, possible or not possible using some analysis, then optimize strategy and implement. This is nothing but similar to your PDCA. So risk-based thinking, RBT, that is a new addition, as I told, involves all the activities in the company. You have to see what can go wrong. It is similar to a FMEA. That is the reason why you don't have a preventive action in this standard. Instead of preventive action, it is converted or it is in terms of RBT, risk-based thinking. So in RBT, you have to identify what can go wrong in every activity, every phase of the process, then what can be done in order to avoid that problems. That is what is your RBT approach, risk-based thinking. The other thing, as I told you, is your organization structure. So if you don't convey the results of the organization or the goals of the organization as appropriate, this is what happens. Just a short video. Okay, this only shows the effect of not taking your team into confidence. If you don't take the complete team into confidence, if the leadership doesn't convey all the goals and vision, it doesn't translate down the level, this is the problem. This is what happens in the company. So it is very important how the leadership conveys the requirements, the vision and mission statement into the respective KPIs and flows down to the individual departments. So that is a requirement of the standard again. Next comes your customer focus. Again, this is part of your leadership activity. What is customer focus? Customer focus is to ensure that whatever you do meets the customer requirements. Or you're always focused at the customer requirements, customer needs, customer expectation, exceeding customer expectation, customer communication, everything to do with customer, including your part conformity, product conformity, process conformity, everything. So just because you have customer focus doesn't mean to say that you can bypass the activities. That is not the activity. That is not what is customer focus. Just because the customer asked you to deliver the things in time doesn't mean to say you can bypass any activity like QA activity or whatever it is, and deliver it to the customer. That is not customer focus. Customer focus is meeting the requirements of the customer by following the process. That is what is customer focus. So that is very important. This huge importance is given in this standard. Then communicating the quality policy. Again, what is quality policy? So that has to be communicated down the line and it has to be available to everybody in your department or in your company. Everybody should understand what are the quality policy objectives in their own words. They can answer it in their own words in any language they want, but the intent has to be conveyed. It is not that you have to understand the policy 100% word by word and you have to repeat it, but you have to convey the intent of it in your own language or words. That is important. That only shows how the team is being built and only shows that everybody is in sync and working towards a common goal. So that is the importance what is given. And so they insist that quality policy should be made available. It can be done in terms of trainings, awareness. There are various ways and means of doing it. The next activity under leadership is your organization goals, responsibilities, authorities, which is very, very important. So organization goals, responsibilities, authorities have to be defined for every individual. What he is supposed to do, what he has to do, what he is not supposed to do. Once you understand these roles, responsibilities, it has to be associated with even associated with authority also. Without authority, giving the responsibility doesn't make sense because you cannot discharge your duties. So what you have to do is clearly define roles, responsibility, authorities. You can use a RACI matrix or you can use a 5W1H format. You can use any format you want or any way you want or bullet points or work instruction. You can have any document you want, but you have to have very clear roles, responsibility, authority. What you will do, what you will not do. If you are not doing something, who else will do it? And if you are not there, who will do it? So that roles, responsibility, authority has to be mentioned. Maybe it's part of HR or individual departments. The next clause is your planning. In the planning phase, what is important is your risk. This is the biggest addition. There's a new addition in this standard 2015. It was not there earlier in 2008 standard. So when you plan, plan for risks and opportunities. As I told you earlier, risk is based on your risk-based thinking, RBT. So any activity you take, you have to analyze with respect to the risks and opportunities. That means what can go wrong, and if it goes wrong, what can be the backup mechanism to prevent the eventuality or prevent the effects of that problem or the risk. That is what you have to address. Now that can be done. What is risk? Risk is nothing but the unforeseen situation which can arise. And how do you manage that? How do you get prepared for that before it happens? It is similar to your FME or your preventive action. It is all the same. So any activity which you take, you should have a backup plan. If this goes wrong, I have another backup plan which can negate the effect of that risk. That is what is your risk planning or risk-based thinking. Now, organization shall plan for the risks and opportunities. It says. So how do you plan for risk and opportunities? There are various ways of planning it. There are various tools and techniques for doing it. The simplest one, and what all risks do you plan? There are mainly 4 types of activities or the areas in which you plan for the risk. Matter of fact, whatever slides are here, whatever is written here, is nothing new. It is all exactly the standard cut and paste, copy paste. Not a single word is changed. So this is as per the standard itself. So don't be under the impression that slides what I'm showing, I'm not going through the slide, but I'm going very fast. You're not able to read or don't have time to read. It is the same as the standard. If you take the standard 2015, ISO 9001 2015, it is same word by word, it is same. So you need not worry, you need not run through whatever is or read through whatever is there in the slide. You can see that later on, you can read the standard later on. The actions to address risk and opportunities. What are the risks and opportunities that you address? The main things are your strategic risk, operation risk, reporting risk, and compliance risk. There are other risks also which you can address. Under strategic risk, you have economy, industry, strategic, social, technological, organization risk. There are plenty of risks which you can address. It's not that you have to address all of these. You can address as appropriate, whatever is appropriate to your organization. And operations risk is that is the main core area of your operation. It can address your environmental, financial, business continuity, that is your BCP, commercial risk, project risk. HR related, reputation, etc. Then reporting is information, communication, reporting skills, etc. Then legal, regulatory, again it is compliance related, statutory and regulatory compliance. So there are various risks which you can address as appropriate. Again, some organization, bigger organization will have a lot of problems, a lot of risks to be identified. Smaller organization will have small. So as appropriate to organization, identify the risk, then opportunity and risk of not doing it. So what are the opportunities and what are the threats in having this risk and how do you mitigate it? That is the core essence of this clause to addressing risk. We have considered every potential risk as the risk of avoiding all risk. That means to say you have to address everything. Don't assume that this is not a risk, nothing will happen. Okay, when it comes to that, we'll see what happens. Don't give chance for any assumption. Consider the worst case scenario and address the risk. It may be a major problem or it may be minor. Now it may be a minor issue or a medium issue. Later on, it might become a major problem. So keep that in mind and address every risk. At least note it down and keep monitoring. That is the requirement. That is the biggest change or biggest addition in this 2015 standard. Now, planning of objectives, quality objectives and planning, any objectives which you plan the objectives has to be measurable, relevant, monitored, communicated. That means what any KPIs or any metric which you have should be based on SMART objectives. That means it should be measurable. Unless and until it is measurable, you cannot improve it. So measuring the KPIs is a must. Next, planning of changes. How do you plan for the changes? What are the purpose of changes? That is your change management. How do you make a change? You have to keep track of that. You can have a change control board. You can have a change control meeting. There are various ways of doing it. You can have a ECN and ECR for effecting the change or bringing the changes, or you can have a change documentation in place. There are various ways and means of changing. And once there is any change from maybe the process change or the customer requirements change, again, you'll have to evaluate the risk, the potential consequences of change, how it will affect your performance, how it will affect the product, your process and everything. Then you should take a decision. So when there is a change management, it has to be reviewed in the committee. You should have a board for like a change control board, or you can call it by any name. You should have a consensus, then implement the change, come out with the change and implement the change. Don't arbitrarily jump into conclusion and make a change. And it's a very important step and very important procedure which has to be followed. Change management. So there is a huge emphasis for change management in this standard. Next, coming to support resources. Resources again can be human resources, or it can be manpower, or it can be technical, it can be material resources, or it can be machinery, it can be anything. So what are the resources needed, and how the resources are helpful in your organization to establish your QMS and to meet all the metrics or the requirements of the standard. That is the requirement. So as I told you, resources can be the HR resource, the human resource, or materialistic resource. So whatever resource you have, ensure that the resources are okay, and finally they supplement and complement and bringing, and to see that those resources help in the organization, building up the organization. You cannot have some resource for the sake of having a resource and not able to contribute towards the organization QMS or organization goals and objectives. You cannot have such resources. The resources should help you to achieve your goals and objectives. And they should be able to support the management as appropriate. So the onus lies with the management, top management, leadership, HR to identify such a resource and deploy it. Then monitoring and measurement of resources. Again, very important. How do you monitor and measure the resources? Again, the resources can be human resource or something. The resources, the organization shall determine to provide the resources needed. Once you have to identify the resource, once it is identified, then you recruit the resource or buy the resource or provide the resource. Then ensure that the resources provided are suitable for specific types of monitoring and measuring activities. It can be even measuring instrument, it can be machinery, it can be anything. It should be suitable for your activities. whatever resources, it can be human resource. Human resource suitability means the skill has to be suitable, the competency has to be suitable for the nature of job and the type of job what he is doing. That is what we say when you say it is suitable for this specific type. Or if it is machinery, measuring instrument, it can be anything. So when you talk about resources, see that whatever you have resource, whether it is manpower or measuring instrument, it is suitable for the type of job what you are doing. And you should be able to identify and meet your requirements. You cannot have just a resource or just a measuring instrument which is not being used properly and you don't know how to use it, or it's not serving the purpose. That is not resource utilization. Now, measurement traceability. Very important in all the companies. How do you maintain traceability of a product? How do you talk when you talk about traceability? You have backward traceability and forward traceability. How do you maintain backward traceability? Backward traceability means you start with a product from any stage and go back up to the raw material. You trace it. Forward traceability means you start with anywhere and up to the end product or up to the customer. You should be able to demonstrate both forward traceability and backward traceability. That is a requirement. That's a big requirement that can be part of your configuration management, that can be part of your verification and validation. It can be part of your traceability requirements. It can be part of anything, where a V&V activity like that. So why do you say that this is important? How do you do that? One of the ways which is traceability can be demonstrated is your calibration by measuring instrument. Once your measuring instrument is okay, once your SOPs are okay, once your COCs are okay, COC means hello, COC is your for your documentation for your raw material certificate of conformance. So once you have the COCs, you can trace back to your lot number or heat lot number from to the raw material stage. So that is very important to maintain that type of traceability. And when you talk about measurements, traceability is important because the instrumentation measurement has to be done. Now, this is an example to show why it is important. Your calibration is important. So here you saw three different measuring tapes, identical measuring tapes giving different readings. That is the problem what you have with measuring instruments. Most of the measuring instruments, if you take 2 or 3 measuring instruments, start measuring, you'll get different readings. The reason is that there will be some differences between instrument to instrument. So the reason the way it can be corrected is your calibration. That is the reason why you get it calibrated, so that it meets the requirement or meets the standard and as per the some international standards or your benchmark standards. So calibration has to be done, and also gauge R&R has to be done. We will not go into details of gauge R&R. That is your gauge R&R means reproduction reproducibility. That has to be demonstrated. Only then you can be sure that the instrument what you're using is okay, and the person who's using the instrument is knowledgeable about how to use. That is the importance of calibration. Next, in your support, under support clause, you have the organization structure. Organization knowledge. In organization knowledge, what is important is what is organization knowledge? How do you document organization knowledge? Organization knowledge is nothing but your core competent knowledge of the core areas. It is not everything which is going on in the company. That is not organization knowledge. Organization knowledge is for the core process areas. It is very critical process areas. If that is not done, or if that person who is got that knowledge or the skill is not there, then what happens to the organization? What happens to the process? How it affects the end product? How it affects the customer? That is what is important. You have to identify that, and then you have to document it and see that that organization knowledge is transformed and flowed down to the other people, and you have somebody as a backup. And how do you get that organization knowledge? This organization knowledge comes from your information, which is again retained. It comes as a retained documented information because you document everything what is important and critical in that process. You analyze, incorporate into the process, communicate to others, and it has to be widely understood by others also. You should have a backup resource in place, and it is embraced by the leadership. top management should acknowledge it and say that yes, this is important, this is our core area, this is our USP of our company, this is how this process works, this is how you should do. It is not just general machining, milling, drilling, not those. It is very specific areas which you call it as organization. And that has to be documented as organization. And organization knowledge has to be imparted to others. The training has to be given and it has to be imparted to everybody, made aware that yes, this is an organization knowledge, please understand. And because this is our core USP area, please understand and implement. So sharing of that information is a must. That is organization knowledge. And that is a new addition in this standard. So you have to demonstrate what is organization knowledge, how are you demonstrating it, and how are you sharing that information. The next one is your competency. That is your skill and competence. Again, it's under the support clause. What do you mean by competency? What do you mean by skill and what is competence? Skill is different, competency is different. Skill is at lower level, competence is bit next level, that is higher level. So you have to identify what are the core areas, what are the skills and competencies required in order to carry out that activity, be it anybody, be it any level of the organization, be it a worker or middleman or mid-level management or manager or whoever it is, as appropriate in that organization structure. You have to identify the skills and competencies required. So once you identify that through a skill matrix or a competency matrix, he should be trained, and training has to be imparted, and training evaluation has to be done. So what is the minimum level of competence around here? That you have to decide. What is the type of competency required? What is the minimum level of competency which is required? And in order to carry out the activity, am I competent to do that or not? So that has to be discussed with your boss or with the HR. Then appropriate person has to be deployed in that area for carrying out that activity. Next is the awareness. Awareness for the people working throughout in the organization everywhere, they should be aware of quality policy objectives. As I told you that flow down has to happen from the vision, mission statement till the worker level. So how do you build that awareness? One of the ways in which it is done is through your training. So regular trainings have to be done, has to be imparted to everybody in the organization, whatever level they are. And training should be really done not for the sake of training, being done for the sake of audits. It is not, we are not talking about that type of training, because many of the companies, what I have seen is they just do the training for the sake of audit purpose. Just before the audit, they'll go around, get the signatures from everybody saying that yes, training is done. Even though the training is not important, just to show to the auditor that completion of the activity, they'll get the signatures from them. That is not the way it has to be done. The people have to be really trained. Whatever is our level of awareness has to be given to them, has to be imparted to them, and you have to see that they are competent and skilled enough to carry out the activity. That is a requirement. You have to demonstrate that requirement under support. The next clause is in your support is your communication. Very important. Communication is both horizontal communication and vertical communication. So communication, why do you say it is important? It is important in order to convey the activities, as I told earlier, from the top management till the last worker level. So how do you communicate? It can be, again, by WNH format. It can be any way of communication. It can be bulletin boards. It can be emails. It can be stand-up meeting. It can be anything. And also across the organization and also to the customer. So communication should be really effective. When you say something, when you communicate, you should understand that the other person understands you and then reciprocates. That is what is communication. It cannot be one-sided. So how do you make sure that your communication is effective? So you have to follow up with the communication. If you, depending on what you have communicated, depending on the importance of the nature of the subject, what you have communicated, you'll have to follow up and see that the action is being taken and it is closed. That is what is communication. The next one is your documented information. As I told earlier, documented information means it contains both retained documented information and maintained documented information. One is retained, maintained means it is SOPs, records, work instructions and all that. Retained documented information means it is reports or formats, filled up formats. You know why it is important? There is nothing for me to stress on the documentation. The reason why documentation is important is to ensure conformity. Without documentation being completed, none of the activities are completed. You cannot demonstrate, you cannot show that your activity is completed without proper documentation and closing the gaps. So whatever is the appropriate documentation has to be done. Whatever is appropriate checklists or work instructions or formats to be filled up, it has to be filled up. That is the importance of documentation. The next biggest section clause is your operations. Under operations, your operation planning and control. Most important activity in an organization. What are the things that you plan, implement, and control? And how do you do that? Again, this is part of your leadership team, or it is part of your management team, which comprises of HODs of different departments, or it can be some mid-level management as appropriate to the activity. So any activity you take, you have to plan, implement, and control. It can be purchase, it can be outsource activity, it can be manufacturing, in-house activity, it can be anything. So utmost importance has to be given. It is not just planning, implementation, control. It is not like this. Just a minute, I'll say, apparently I am the decision maker in this company. Blindly you say that do whatever I say, I am the decision maker, you cannot question. That is not forcing your saying your authority. I made a mistake, we must find a root cause analysis by saying it is not my fault. No, that is not the way it is done. This is not the way. Do as I say, but not as you do. No, this is not the way of showing your authority or your planning activity. Your planning should be properly done. You should have a cross-functional team. You should understand what are the cross-functional team, what are the requirements, and every activity has to be planned properly and implemented and seen that the other person understands, then follow up on that. So that is a very big area, very big task to be done under this clause. The other main thing is your design and development control. The design and development control talks about your design activities, what are the development activities, what are the verification validation you do, how do you make the design, how do you make the design changes, how do you implement the change, how do you follow up of the change, what you test, and how do you verify and how do you validate. Everything comes under your design and development clauses. We are not going to all details of all the clauses, but mainly design and development talks about verification and validation, that your V and V activity. What is the difference between V and V, verification and validation? The difference between verification and verification is for every stage what you do. You have input, your design process, output. Verify at every stage, ensure that it is okay, being the processing or being followed. Validation means with respect to the final product, is it validate with respect to your user requirements or the customer needs? That is your validation. So once you validate your final product with respect to your customer needs, that means your product is okay, that is meeting the requirements of the customer. And everything is part of your review. So in your review of the design life cycle, you have both V and V activities to be done. It is very important to ensure that you have proper V and V activities. To do that, you have the proper SOP, work instruction, or the checklist, defined checklist, and you identify or collect the proper KPIs, metrics, and if there is a problem, work on that metric. So don't blame your quality manager or person for any V&V activity. V&V activity has to be done at every stage. It is not the responsibility of the quality manager, and it is not the final stage. It has to be done at every stage in your process. Only then the final yield will be okay. Only then your output will be proper. So that is what is your verification activity throughout the life cycle, throughout your product process life cycle. Next is your purchase activity. Control of provisions of resources for products and services. This clause 8.4 talks about your purchase requirement, external resources, your outsourcing activity, then your approved vendors, approved supplier list or approved vendor list, whatever you call it as. So ensure that every activity, every purchase, what you do has to be from an approved vendor. You cannot go to anybody and buy the material. And how do you have that list of approved vendors? whom are your approved vendors, and make sure your approved vendor list is appropriate to your organization or to the activity what you're doing. Don't include everybody in your every activity what you're doing in your company as your approved vendor. Example, your toilet papers, your this one house cleaning stuff and all that. Those need not be from approved vendors. Approved vendors has to be only for your core areas, important things what you buy, and for the items which are responsible to your conformance of the product. Only those things have to be from your approved vendor, not other things. So don't be under the impression your approved vendor list has to cover everything what is there in the company or what you are buying in that company. No, not necessarily. So you identify what are the important things, and only those you go to your approved vendors or approved suppliers. Some of the approved vendors can be your approved vendors or it can be identified by your customer. Either way, it is okay. If your customer tells you the approved vendors, go to them and buy. So that is your approved vendors. Next comes your identification and traceability, which I already told you. That's also part of your operation. So that talks about your conformity of your product. Again, it talks about your V&V activity, how your V&V is done, and how do you identify, how is it traceable, and how do you ensure that the products are conformed to ensure conformity of products. And what is conformity of products? Conformity of products is nothing but your end result, how it is meeting your customer requirements or customer needs. What you identified at the time of RFP, RFQ, or during your feasibility review. During that stage, whatever you identified will be done or will be delivered. The end result, is it meeting the requirements? That is conformity of products. You have to ensure that proper validation is done to demonstrate conformity of product. Next, your change control. Again, this is nothing but your change management. So what is change management? I told you earlier, change management, you can have a change control board, change review board, you can have any type of board you want, and anything which goes, any change with it happens, whether it is QMS change or process change or requirement change, or any change has to go through this change control board, discussed, then only it has to be implemented. Now, planning change control is done in two stages. That is your 6.3, clause number 6.3 talks about planning of changes. Clause number 856 talks about control of changes. Both are with respect to the change management. When you're talking about planning of changes, it is a proactive change, strategic, or organization-wide. It deliberates, it's proposed and evaluated and all. That is your planning of changes. Then once you implement the change, again, change control has to be done. That change control will be a reactive activity. It will be tactical. It is production focused. It happens fast review of what was implemented, etc. So first is the planning of the changes, then implement the change, then control the changes or review of the changes or monitoring the changes. So it's a big activity. Control of changes or the change control is a big and very important activity. And it has to be properly documented. It can be related to your NC, it can be related to your customer feedback, customer complaints, it can be related to anything. Once you identify some changes, it has to be monitored, planned and monitored. The next is your NC outputs. What is non-conforming? What is non-conforming output? Anything which is not meeting the customer requirement as it is not meeting as stated in the requirement or your RFP or RFQ stage, that is a non-conforming output. Or it can be if you that is with respect to external customer. When you're talking with respect to internal customer, any activity which you do and down the line, if it's something is not meeting or not, you are not able to assemble it or it is not matching, that again it becomes a NC part, NC product. So how do you deal with non-conforming output? You know what is non-conforming? Anything which is dissimilar or not as per the standard is your non-conforming. And once you do that, you should come out with a proper root cause analysis as to who has done it, how it has done it, not with respect to the person, but with respect to the process. Once you identify that the process, that what has happened, what has gone wrong, then come out with a solution, identify the proper solution, then come out with a problem. It is as simple as that. Maybe you can do a root cause analysis, that is RCA analysis, that is part of AT report. You can have any type of NC reporting. So that proper analysis has to be done. Then the process has to be changed or it has to be corrected. That is your corrective action. Then, of course, you should have a preventive action also in place. This is about your NC part or NC. Then the 9th clause talks about your performance evaluation. Performance evaluation talks about your customer feedback, customer satisfaction, and perception. In this standard, it talks about customer's perception. Customer perception is different, customer satisfaction is different. The standard requires you to monitor perception. What is perception? Perception is nothing but your first impression, what the customer gets about you. That is perception. Satisfaction is different. Satisfaction comes later. So how do you monitor customer perception? How do you measure that? It's not easy, it is not straightforward, but there are ways and means of doing it. There's ways of getting the perception of the customer. It's possible to some extent. So that is what is required from the standard. Then later on, customer feedback and customer satisfaction. You know what is customer feedback, you take customer feedback regularly, you know what is customer satisfaction because you have been working on it. So we will not go into details. So customer feedback and satisfaction, what when we are referring is, be it any type of customer, you have to take regular feedback from him. What you are doing is okay or not okay, whether it is meeting the requirements or not meeting the requirements. If anything changes to be done, it has to be changed in situ there itself without going further. So that is what is your customer satisfaction. A short video. It says quality is not what the customer returns, but when the customer returns. You want to know who has written it? Okay, fine. It is mine, nobody else. Now we'll see a short video about customer satisfaction. You might have seen this is from WhatsApp University. Are you able to see the videos? Can you hear it? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Are the videos clear?
Yeah, quite good.
Okay.
And daily newspapers for his customers. Says customer satisfaction is his main motive. He also has a stereo and small television in his auto, which he uses to play new and popular Hindi, English, and Tamil songs. Anna also plans to offer free internet service to his customers from next month. And above all, he charges a maximum amount of rupees 15 to 20 for the longest distance.
என்னோட நேம் அண்ணாதுரன். நான் ஒரு 4 இயர்ஸா OMR ரோட்ல ஷேர் ஆட்டோ ஓட்டிட்டு இருக்கேன். அவங்க வந்து இந்த ஜாபை கொஞ்சம் சாட்டிஸ்ஃபைடா பண்ணணும் அப்படின்ற ஒரு காரணத்தினால வண்டிக்குள்ள சரி கஸ்டமர்ஸ்க்கு தான் நம்மளுக்கு கடவுள் அப்படின்ற ஒரு தாட்ல வந்து ஏதாவது வித்தியாசமா பண்ணணும் அப்படின்ற ஒரு அப்ரோச்ல சரி என்ன பண்ணலாம் அப்படின்னு யோசிச்ச போது சரி மேக்சின்ஸ் நியூஸ் பேப்பர்ஸ் அந்த மாதிரி மீடியா விஷயங்களை உள்ள கொண்டு வரலாம் அப்படின்ற ஒரு தாட்ல ஒரு 35 or 40 மேக்சின்ஸ் டெய்லி ஒரு 6 நியூஸ் பேப்பர் அதெல்லாம் கொடுத்தா அவங்க சாட்டிஸ்ஃபைட் ஆவாங்க அப்படின்ற ஒரு ஃபீல் எனக்கு கிடைக்கும். நான் அதை பண்ணணும்னு நினைச்சேன்.
And lives with his parents and 3 siblings. His 2 brothers are also in the same profession but do not offer any such service. They also lovingly mock him sometimes for his madness for his profession. Anna comes up with regular contests and lucky draws for his passengers and also gives gift vouchers to the winners. He has mobile phone recharge facilities in his auto so that his customers do not face the inconvenience of wasting time to stop and recharge their phone.
அதுக்கப்புறம் பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஒரு தடவை நான் சென்ட்ரல்ல நிக்கும் போது ஒரு பக்கத்துல ஒரு வேற ஒரு டிஸ்ட்ரிக்ட்ல இருந்து வந்த ஒருத்தர் வந்து ஃபீவர் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு அவங்க டேடி எடுத்துட்டு வந்து அட்மிட் பண்ணிருக்காங்க சென்ட்ரல் ஜிஹெச்ல. அப்போ ஒரு 12:30 அந்த மாதிரி டைமிங் இருக்கும். அவரு திடீர்னு என்கிட்ட சடனா வந்து நான் உங்ககிட்ட மொபைல் இருக்கா, சார்ஜ் இருக்கா உங்க மொபைல்ல அப்படின்ற ஒரு தாட்னால கேட்டாரு. ஸோ அவர் போன்ல பேலன்ஸும் இல்லை. 2 நாளைக்கு முன்னாடி ஹாஸ்பிட்டல்ல வந்து அட்மிட் ஆனதுனால அவங்க போன்லயும் சார்ஜ் இல்லை அப்படின்ற ஒரு காரணத்தினால அவங்க அப்பா வந்து டெத் ஆயிட்டாரு. அந்த விஷயத்த வந்து அவங்க ஃபேமிலி கூட அவரால தெரியப்படுத்த முடியாத ஒரு கட்டாயத்துக்கு தள்ளப்பட்டாரு. அந்த டைம்ல என் கையில என்னோட வண்டிக்குள்ள இப்ப இருக்கிற இந்த மாதிரி ரீசார்ஜ் பண்ற மாதிரியான ஃபெசிலிட்டியோ அல்லது சார்ஜரோ அவருக்கு அப்ப என்னோட வண்டிக்குள்ள இருந்துருந்துச்சுன்னா அவரோட கண்ணுக்கு நான் கடவுளா தெரிஞ்சிருப்பேன். அந்த ஒரு தாட் தான் அது ஆல் மொபைல் நெட்வொர்க் ரீசார்ஜ் அவைலபிள் ஷேர் ஆட்டோ சார்ஜர் அந்த மாதிரி எல்லாமே. ஸோ ஒரு விஷயம் தேவைப்படும் போது நமக்கு கிடைக்காத ஒரு விஷயம் வந்து கண்டிப்பா இந்த உலகத்துல எதா இருந்தாலும் அது வேஸ்ட் அப்படின்றதுதான் என்னோட தாட்டு. சோ அவருக்கு அப்ப என்னால கொடுக்க முடியல. அந்த ஒரு தாக்கம் தான் எனக்கு வந்து நான் கண்டிப்பா இந்த ரீசார்ஜ் எல்லாம் வந்து நான் பிசினஸா பண்ணல, சர்வீஸா தான் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கேன். அப்புறம் பாத்தீங்கன்னா என்னோட ஆம்பிஷன், அதாவது வந்து ஏதாவது பண்ணணும் அப்படின்ற ஒரு தாட்ல வந்து நான் ஒரு பையனை படிக்க வைக்கலான்னு இருக்கேன். அதாவது வந்து ஒரு பையனுக்கு வந்து கல்வி அறிவை விட விஷயங்கள் சாப்பாட்டுக்காகலாம் இப்ப பசங்க பள்ளிக்கூடத்துக்கு போற ஒரு தாட்டுக்கு தள்ளப்பட்டாங்க. அதாவது வந்து நல்லா படிக்கிற பசங்க சாப்பாட்டுக்காக பள்ளிக்கூடத்துக்கு போயிட்டு அவங்க குறிப்பிட்ட வயசுக்கு அப்புறம் படிக்க வைக்க முடியாம அவங்க வீட்டிலேயே நிறுத்துறாங்க. அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு கார்பரேட் ஸ்கூல்ல நல்லா படிக்கிற ஒரு பையனை சூஸ் பண்ணி என்னோட காசு செலவு பண்ணி மெட்ரிகுலேஷன் ஸ்கூல்ல சேர்த்து படிக்க வைக்கணும் அப்படின்றது தான் என்னோட ஆசை. நான் நெக்ஸ்ட் இயர்ல இருந்து அதை நான் கண்டிப்பா ப்ராசஸ் பண்ணிடுவேன். அதாவது வந்து இந்த விஷயத்த நான் வெளியே சொல்லும் போது அதுக்கு நிறைய பேர் டொனேட் தரேன்னாங்க. டொனேஷன் வாங்கிலாம் நான் சத்தியமா அதை பண்ண மாட்டேன். என்னோட கை காசை போட்டு தான் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்றது தான் என்னோட ஆசையே. நான் கண்டிப்பா அதை நான் பண்ணிடுவேன் நெக்ஸ்ட் இயர்ல. அதாவது வந்து எனக்கு அதை நான் பண்ணிடுவேன் கண்டிப்பா.
Anna provides customers with discounts on different occasions, like 50% off to travelers on Abdul Kalam's birthday, and also a chocolate, free ride to mother and child on Mother's Day, and to couples on Valentine's Day, etc. Anna does not charge any money from teachers because he feels that without teachers, no professionals or big names would be what they are today.
I love my job.
So next, another 2 minutes, we will see the continuation.
My customers, I'm meeting every meal also my customer care. Customers value is very important. 100 rupees you provide on to the 1 kg rice inside stone, how you feel? Safety and respect. This is the majority expectation. Newspaper in the morning, 2 in the evening. So 35 different kind of journals. My TV also 8 languages program. Hindi, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, Punjabi, Western, Tamil, Bhojpuri. Any Hindi customer travel my auto, I play for the Hindi song. Any Telugu customer travel my auto, I play for the Telugu song. Okay. Dhanyavadalu Malli Koduku Malchi Deva Bhava. I am also saying. Any Kannada people travel my auto, I play for the Kannada song. Dhanyavadalu Mathya Palli. I am also saying Atti Deva Bhava. Any Malayalam people travel my auto, Nalli Vindu Varunu Atti Deva Bhava. I play for the Malayalam song. Slow internet better than no internet. Right? I provide 2,500 rupees and 3,000 rupees spent for the internet connection in my customer. So 2013 this one. My customers is always smart. So I provide iPad Pro in my customers. Oh wow.
Okay, that is what is customer satisfaction. If you see this video, he has adopted every aspect or every clause of ISO 9000. You take customer focus, he has done that. Continuous improvement, he has done that. Management review, he has done that. You take any clause, it is addressed in this video. Okay, that apart. So when an auto driver can do that, anybody in any company can do it. It has to be done. So that is about customer satisfaction. Next, here's your performance evaluation, which is done through audits. You know the importance of audit, when it is done, why it is done. So that is the requirement. The reason for audits are done is it is not for finding fault. It is a fact-finding activity. You have to understand that audits are fact-finding, not fault-finding. So whether it is internal audit or external audit, you have to give importance to that and see that you are transparent enough in order to conduct the audit. There is no point in hiding the facts or hiding your problems. That is not the purpose of an audit, especially internal audits. You should be very transparent and open and admit what you are doing. Whether it is okay or not okay will be told by the auditor, and take proper corrective action so that your external audits will be okay, proper, and it will be smooth sailing. You need not have any fear of doing an audit. So understand the purpose of the intent behind the audit. And the more frequent you do the audits, it's better to the organization. That is about your internal audits. And very few companies, they do that, they take it for granted, saying that it is okay, chalta hai, nothing will happen, it's okay. Once in a while, once in a year, it is mandatory to do an audit. We'll do it once in a year before the surveillance audit. That is the importance what they give to audits and your MRMs. That is your management review. So management review, how is it done? The purpose of doing management review, as I've been telling you, you have to address everything, whatever is going on in the management in the company, and take proper informed decisions. That is what is management review. And the top management has to devote time for this management review. It is not just for the sake of having a review. Okay, come on, we will have a review because it is time for external audit. Somebody is coming to check the document. We'll have a review and finish it within the next 10-15 minutes. That is not the way the management review is conducted. Management review has to be conducted properly and take into consideration all the problems what is going on in the company. See the metrics, what is going on, whether the metrics is meeting your KPIs or not. If it is not meeting the KPIs, ask the concerned person what has to be done, how it has to be done, and do the follow-up activity. That is what is management review meeting or MRM meeting. Next, your inputs to the management review. The management reviews shall be planned and carried out in taking into consideration all the different inputs in the organization. The inputs can be customer satisfaction, quality objectives, QMS, your problems, NC reports, monitoring, audit results. It can be anything. All of them have to be taken into consideration. Then a management review has to be done. That is the purpose and that is the intent of management review. And the top management has to devote time and he has to take the responsibility. He has to take the ownership of conducting the management review and he should be completely involved in it. And that is what is again demonstrating leadership. And if there's any problem, he has to ensure, he has to pitch in and see that the problem is sorted. The next year, management review outputs. What are the outputs? And depending on the output, what needs to be changed? Maybe sometimes QMS have to be changed, revised, or maybe sometimes your SOPs have to be revised, or maybe sometimes your metrics are not okay, your KPIs are not okay, that has to be revised. So proper decision has to be taken during a management review, and as appropriate, the document has to be changed. It is not that once you write the document, you stay with the document and stick with that for years together, lifelong, or till the company exists. It's not that. Everything is dynamic. You have to change or it gets changed as appropriate during the life cycle of the process or during as and when the company matures. That is what is maturity. So during the review, see that you hear both the parties and see what is going wrong and how you can set it right with any change as appropriate. Then finally, the last clause is your improvement. What is improvement? It is nothing but your meeting the requirements or meeting the KPIs. If your KPI and metrics are not being met, it can be because of any reason, you have to take proper corrective action and preventive action. That is your CAPA. So once you have the CAPA in place, corrective and preventive action, all metrics can be met or all your process can be modified or changed. So what is that CAPA? You have to understand that CAPA, your corrective action, preventive action. If you do that, you will have proper solution. If you do a proper CAPA, if you do a proper corrective action, your root cause analysis. Remember, every problem has a solution. Okay, so it's not that the problems are there and there is no solution. Everything will have a solution provided you use the right approach, you use the right tools and the right skill sets, and the cross-functional team who are working on that problem are really knowledgeable about it. Only then you can come out with a solution. Otherwise, you can never come out with any solution for any problem. So that is important. Again, it talks about your skills and competence. The last one is your continual improvement. It talks about your effectiveness of your QMS. So far, what you are told, what you have spoken from clause 1 to clause 10, finally it boils down to checking the effectiveness of your quality management system, your QMS. Is it really effective? Is it working? Effectiveness means working towards a result or a goal, that is your output. Are you getting the desired results? Are you getting the required quality products and services, and you're meeting the customer requirements or satisfaction? That is what is effectiveness. You monitor with respect to the goals and targets which you have set at the beginning of the activity. We are not talking about efficiency, we are talking about effectiveness. Because the standard everywhere it talks about effectiveness of the standard and effectiveness of the QMS or effectiveness of any action what you take. And why do we do all this so far? What you have done? I'm afraid you can only get this contract if you are ISO compliant. There may be some requirements, some mandatory requirement from our organization saying that yes, if your company is ISO certified, only then you can be approved vendor to us. Some of the customers will insist. So it may be one of the reasons for getting ISO certified. The ISO certification is not only for namesake, but you have to understand the intent behind that, and it should help the organization to improve yourself. That is the requirement of the system, any system you put in place. It is not just for getting orders or just like a marketing tool. Now, this is in short about your ISO QMS, some of the clauses, some of the important clauses about ISO 9000:2050. Now we'll see a quick example of how you are implementing continuous improvement in Foundry. Just taken this example, like as I told, because most of you are from Foundry industry. There are basically 10 steps. The first one is come out with the process. Identify the process. You have a resource, that is you have a SIPOC, as I told earlier. SIPOC is supplier input process output customer. That is your SIPOC. So identify the SIPOC area. Who are the suppliers? What are the inputs? Maybe this is the process area what we are talking about. This output, this is the customer. So identify the SIPOC first before you start. Then this becomes your process, then it becomes your sub-process. So break it down into process and sub-process. Then step 1, once you identify that, come with the step 1, identify the core area. Now the core process area. Core process area, assuming it's a heat treatment area. So you have a high level process map, then you have a second level process map after you identify the core process. The second step will be to have an Excel sheet with record the data of that product conformance, have the traceability in different columns, the document the parts and defects in different columns, break down into your different activities, groups, subgroups. So you can have the products based on the codes, cost of scrap, rework, etc. You can have any type of breakdown in order to collect the data. That is step 2. Step 3, come out with a Pareto. So this may be your defects, common maybe a foundry defect, shrinkage, porosity, weld, then shell inclusion, and all that. This may be the defects. This may be your occurrences, defective frequency. Come out with a Pareto and with your 80-20 principle. This is your 80 line. Come here, come here. So these will be the areas which you will be addressing. 1, 2, 3 process areas, commonly occurring casting defects. Step 4 will be after identifying the areas, you need to identify the casting defects that are attributable to the process. What are the casting defects? Maybe it's pattern making, maybe mold core making, or melting, pouring, heat treatment, etc. There may be a lot of n number of defects which can be identified. So identify the defects which are attributed to your core area, which you saw it in the previous step. Next, step 5 talks about your SIPOC diagram after you break down to sub-process. Next step, to create a SIPOC diagram for the sub-process in the foundry, which we just saw. The most effective metrics for the process is to collect the data. Again, once you identify the sub-process, collect the data at every step, at every stage. Finally, your goal is for continuous improvement. You should have a metric, you should have a target. Against the target, you should measure the metrics. So it's important to collect the correct data. Correctness of the data is very important. Data integrity is very, very important. Not only in this case, any analysis you do, integrity of data is very important. How you collect the data and what you collect, what for you collect the data, and what are the instruments you use for collecting the data, and how you analyze or segregate the data. Based on that, you can get the results. Step 6 is your performance metric, considered as a response to the output. Identify all the factors which are contributing to the problem. So it will not be one, it may be n number of factors. So it is X. So what is X? That is your contributing problem. If you have more than one that is relevant to the problem, use a cause and effect diagram, cause and effect matrix. That is your root cause analysis or Ishikawa diagram. Use that and come out with root causes. Next step will be to collect the data in organized format, gives the response to the Y. That is Y is equal to f of X. Y is your dependent variable, X is your independent variable. That is your input. Don't worry about Y, concentrate on the input. You change the input, control the inputs, automatically the Y will be all right, it will be met. That is your out. You cannot control the output, but you can control the inputs. That's what the equation says. That's the case with anything. You don't have any control on your outputs. Next step is step number 9, optimize the Y. So have a target in place, come out with a metric or your benchmark results or your target results, try to optimize it as much as possible. It may not be as easy as we tell, but try to optimize the Y. The last step is to provide actionable information, what you did, how you did it, document it, maybe use a ERP software or any dashboard, visual dashboard, document everything what you have done, starting from your data collection, from your first page till the last, and how you help that to change, and any change in your process has to get reflected in your SOPs or work instructions or in your CPOC diagram itself, or sub-process have to change. There are a lot of changes which happens once you identify the problems and come out with a solution to the problem. So in this way, you come out with your continuous improvement. Be it any activity, any company, it is not the same. It is not only for Foundry, being any company. And by doing this, what do you achieve? These are the results what you achieve. These are the actual results which is achieved in some company XYZ. Don't want to name the company. You can see the results: 20% reduction in time spent, 30% reduction again time management, 40% reduction in time management, external audits, 15% in time spent receiving inspection, 10% reduction of time in document review, 18% IT spending is reduced, 30% new product development, 3% rejection in scrap, 20% in time spent for setting up and managing NC products. There are various metrics or various activity places where you have improvements, where you have cost reductions. All this will contribute to your profit or savings. Ultimately, this is what you achieve by properly implementing the system and following the system. This is in short about ISO, and why we are doing this is a continuous improvement journey, meeting our goals, finally ending with business process improvement. You do start with PDCA cycle, then something wrong, go back, restart, finally end up with business process improvement. And you know quality, what is quality? It is whose responsibility? It is everybody's responsibility, not one man show. It is not a responsibility of the quality department, but everybody in the organization. Because Ford has told quality means doing it right when no one is looking. That is what is quality system meant to be. Now, if there's any questions, we can take it up.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's a nice session. Any questions from the participant? They can write in chat box or raise your hands.
Or you can send me a mail. You can call me up anytime you want.
Sir, I have a few questions. I will just start with it. First is you talk about risk-based thinking.
Right.
Can you just elaborate it a little bit with some small example?
On risk-based thinking?
Yes.
Okay, risk-based thinking means what is the risk you perceive and what are the different options you have to mitigate that risk. That is what is called as risk. You have to evaluate every option and mitigate that. I'll give you one example. Say you have a machine shop and you're manufacturing some part and it is being machined or some operation is going on. So what are the risks involved? One risk is maybe the operator will be absent. So that is a risk. That is manpower risk. Another risk may be the tool breakage. So because of the risk, you are not able to meet the customer requirement. Another risk may be the machine breakdown. So assume that these are the three risks which you have identified. How will you evaluate and how do you mitigate each of the risks? First risk, the operator is absent. How will you evaluate that? You evaluated that. How will you mitigate that? The way of mitigation is to train the other people, have multitasking. Right? That is one way of avoiding that risk or minimizing that risk. Or the second way may be outsourcing the activity. If you are not there, it can be outsourced. That outsourcing can also help in risk number 2 and risk number 3, that is tool breakage or machine breakdown. Machine breakdown, the other way of mitigating is to have a regular maintenance of the machine. Proper yearly, not only breakdown maintenance, it can be regular maintenance of the machine. Based on that, you can avoid machine breakdown. Tool breakdown, the way it can be mitigated is have a spare tools in place. Instead of one, if you can have two in place, you can, because you can assume that that is an important activity to be done and it's a critical process. So you can have a backup tool of more than one. So there are various ways in which you can identify the risk and come out with the action plan. In case it happens, what is your backup mechanism? And also you can always outsource the activity if nothing is working.
Just like a contingency plan.
So out of these, what is your preferred action plan? If that happens, your preferred action plan may be to outsource the activity. So finally, you're going with risk number 3. That is your solution number 3. That is outsourcing activity. That is your risk-based thinking. Means you identified the risk, evaluated the risk, seen the pros and cons of each risk, then finally take an informed decision of going ahead with the action number 3. Anything, just example. That is what is risk-based thinking.
And you have to take risk for all the operations or
all the operations,
all the
everything in the company, whatever is going on in the company, you have to identify it as a risk.
Okay. And
Maybe
it is
the most important ones are the core operations. If that stops, will your customer be affected? If the answer is yes, come out with a risk plan for it.
Okay. It is just like a contingency plan.
Yeah,
for
it's
that
a
particular.
contingency plan. It is a contingency plan or your business continuity plan.
Okay.
BCP.
Next question. I have one question in the chat box is regarding role of accounts in ISO.
Pardon?
Role of accounts department in the ISO.
Role of accounts, the role, one of the role, most important role is maybe payable. On time paying to the contractors or the vendors. If you don't pay it on time, they will not come back to you. They won't give you service next time onwards. So the role of account is very important to ensure that the vendors stay with you without going anywhere. It's one of the roles of accounts, finance management. They can have a lot of problems. They can say we don't have funds, management is not giving, all those examples, reasons can be there. But it is very important to see that the vendors stay with you. Otherwise, later on, you'll have problems because they'll stop giving you service or they'll stop giving you parts or your outsourcing activity.
So you talk about the documentation on records. Regarding
Right.
documentation, whether the WhatsApp or emails or social media documents or the discussion on that is
That is also acceptable.
valid in the audit?
Yeah, that is also acceptable, valid, provided you document it properly and you note down, and it should be part of the minutes. It has to be minuted somewhere, saying
So
that yes, as discussed in so and so. You have to inform the customer also.
So it is valid now.
Yeah, it's valid. Many companies they use the internal communication chat as the media of communication. Not WhatsApp, but they use the internal chats.
Next question I have is a list of records and serial numbering in the documentation. It was compulsory in the previous version. In new version also it is mandatory or you can escape it.
Which one? What is mandatory?
List of record and serial number on each record.
Yeah, that is mandatory. Without that, you cannot have traceability. We should have the record number, procedure, format number, then SOP number, all that document number has to be there.
It should be for the traceability purpose.
Yeah, it has to be for traceability. Otherwise, how will you access a record or a document without a number and revision number? That is mandatory.
Next question is regarding responsibility authority. What it should be up to what hierarchy level? You talked that responsibility should become with the authority, but at what up to what hierarchy level it should be defined by the organization?
It is from top to bottom as appropriate. It's not that you talk about all financial things with your workers. as appropriate, depending on the hierarchy of the organization structure, you have to cascade the requirements of the vision and mission down the line. For example, some of the financial aspect can stop at level 1. Later on, those things, how it has to be deployed, it can be in terms of metrics and KPI. Those metrics and KPI should go to the next level or the department level. Next, that metrics again has to be broken down into individual metrics or individual KPIs till the individual operator level or individual engineer level. So it has to be broken down as appropriate to the last level. Even the worker has to know what he is doing, why he is doing, what is the result of his doing, and if he doesn't do, what will happen. That awareness has to be there even at the worker level, at the bottommost level. So depending on the organization structure, it has to flow down.
There is one question in chat box now. It is from Mr. Sadanand sir from Belgaum. On what basis the objective can be defined?
Objective base is based on your company's mission and vision. So for example, there are two types of objectives. One is your quality objectives, which is at the company level. Other one is individual department based objectives. Again, this individual department based objectives has to meet the requirements of your final objective at the company level. So whatever objectives you have or whatever KPIs you have should align with your company objectives, company level objectives. So that traceability or the connection has to be there. You have to ensure that all the objectives, finally, it has to roll up to the company level objectives. And it's a big exercise. It's not just a randomly given objectives. It's a big exercise. It has to be done properly. There are tools to do that. How you identify the objectives, how you assign the objectives. There are tools for doing it. Tools means it's not a big tool. It's just an Excel sheet or simple things which you have to learn or which you can use.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Next question I have is a risk opportunity. Talk about risk opportunity. Whether it is related to SWOT analysis.
Yeah, SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is one of the ways in which you can identify the risk. Whatever you do in SWOT analysis, strength, opportunities, weakness, and threats, that weakness has to come in risk. Whatever you identify as weakness, that means it's a weakness, means it is a risk, opportunity for risk or problem. So that has to be addressed through risk analysis. So you have different, one is SWOT analysis, another is pest analysis, another one is pestle analysis. There are various analysis which can be done. It's not that you have to do everything. You can just do one or two, and all those have to be identified as a risk analysis, risk inputs for your risk.
Okay, sir, thank you. One more question I have related to the same thought process of risk. Recently, we are going through a corona. So, whether the corona or such type of risk can be addressed, and if they had to be addressed, how the organization can address them?
Yeah, that is very important because, as a matter of fact, I don't think any company would have addressed these type of risks last year.
Yeah.
Because it started in January, February, you know that. So that only shows the extent in which a company can foresee the problems. It is nothing your business continuity, BCP. So the more elaborate your BCP plan is to be ready for any eventuality, talks about your preparedness of the company. It can be for server breakdown, IT structure, all that would have been covered because it's a common thing. Nobody would have expected a pandemic to come into effect. So even if you have a pandemic, now it's high time that you go back, revise your risk document or revise your BCP, how you can accommodate these problems in future. It's a learning by itself. So risk document or risk management is not a one-time activity. It is a live document which has to be updated on a regular basis. You should learn from the lessons, what has gone wrong, and update the document. And whatever is the learning from this pandemic can be part of your risk and can be part of your QMS.
Okay. Next question is organization knowledge you talk about. Whether it is same as TGR, TGW in this old TS 16949 or you can say new IITF version.
Yeah, that is what went right and what went wrong.
Yeah, TGR, TGW.
Yeah, it is same. What went right and what went wrong. What went wrong can be learned through your organization knowledge repository. It can come as lessons learned. And as I told, organization knowledge is for core areas. For example, you are machining some tungsten or molybdenum. It is not regular machining. Regular machining of steel, MS, aluminum can be done by anybody, XYZ person. Semi-skilled worker can do it. But if you are doing something with working on molybdenum or tungsten, it requires special skill and special fixtures, tools, and machine settings. That is organization knowledge, not the generic ones. So if that special skill is not there with the person, or if he is not there, what happens to your final output, or does it affect the end product or the customer OTD? That has to be documented. That comes as organization knowledge, not the regular mundane type of work. Because if you start documenting that, there is no end for that. Everything comes under organization knowledge. It's not that.
You can say special process kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a special process. Critical process, critical core operations which affects your output or your customer deliverables.
Actually, I have one question on that same, but I think you have answered to some extent. What I want to understand is whether the organization knowledge comes through FMA, CAPA, history cards, etc. So that was my question. I think you are already answered on that.
It comes
Yeah,
under that.
that's under.
It gets reflected in that.
Correct. Next one is training. Training effectiveness, how to be monitored. Is any guideline given by the system and or your experience how it should be monitored? Because in most of the cases we have a lot of trainings, and when we have a training audits, normally people go through the training evaluation, everything. But when it comes up to training
But that is not effectiveness. That
yeah,
training
effectiveness.
feedback is not effectiveness. Feedback is
Yeah.
different. Effectiveness is different.
Yeah,
So
but
training,
when we come to effectiveness, they most of the people fails there.
nobody does it.
Yeah. So what is
So
the actual how it to be conducted? What are your
training feedback, the one way of understanding training feedback or the effectiveness is your ROI method. One of the ways in which it is monitored is ROI. It is called as Kirkpatrick method. There's a methodology for identifying the training effectiveness and getting the seeing the feedback. ROI methodology. It's a very difficult, very elaborate procedure. But the more common or more easiest one is to use it on the job and to show that and demonstrate saying that yes, this is what you are learning from your training, this is what you have implemented, and these are the results. And that has to be attested by your immediate boss. The boss has to verify and say then yes, the training knowledge is utilized, and this is the result what I got.
what is
So
the time frame after how much time of training it should be conducted, or
depending on the type of training, depending on the type of activity what you are performing, it can be immediate, it can be 1 month, 2 months period, 3 months period. It depends on what.
so organization can
Activity.
take call on that?
Yeah, you can take a call. The manager can decide as to how much time it takes to implement. And because you have to collect the data later on and demonstrate saying that it is working.
You talk about the perception customer, that is customer satisfaction is different, and description of customer is different. So can you just elaborate how it can be, because we have it not know how to get the customer satisfaction data, but this
See,
perspective of,
perception is what you feel about the company or something at the first instance. Love at first sight.
okay, but
Okay.
how to gather that from the customers? Is any form is there or any method how it should be conducted?
One way is your survey questionnaire, customer feedback form, what you get. And most of the feedback forms will have one last question saying that your overall experience,
Okay.
dash, right?
Yeah,
Before that, you have few questions.
correct.
In the few questions, you would have answered, say, 8 out of 10. You would have rated 8 for everything.
Okay.
The last question, he will say your overall expectation or overall satisfaction. He will say 5.
Okay. So that is your
It will not match with the ratings what he has given earlier, isn't it?
yeah.
So why is it he has given 5 as the overall, that is average, and why is it he has given 8 for the individual questions? That is perception. Because he would have given 5 based on some problem what he had sometime in during the course of discussion or your project meetings. Somewhere you would have felt that maybe the communication is not okay. Somewhere you would have felt that your response is not good or to his expectation. Something of that. Based on that, he has remembered that bad incident or one incident. Based on that, he has given a low rating, your overall satisfaction level. That is based on his perception, what he has formed about the company, and that it's very difficult to change that. Once he forms that perception, It is very difficult to change.
Very
So
true.
you'll have to be doubly sure and careful as to what you deliver, how you meet the customer requirement, and how focused you are towards the customer.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
And you should also try to understand his needs before you start. There's a tool which is called as Kano analysis, KANO. You can use that analysis tool to identify the customer requirements beforehand. Even without him telling you, you can elicit the needs of the customer. It is possible to some extent. So that can be used as a tool to meet the customer requirements or exceed customer requirements. So his perception will change. He will have a better perception on your company.
Next question is, you talk about the frequency of internal quality audit and MRM. You told that many companies doing it once in a year just before the audit, the MRM and the internal audit. The internal quality audit we normally say, the word itself is a quality, because it's not
Yeah.
internal audit, it should be quality audit.
It's
So
IQA.
yeah. So what should be the ideal frequency you thought? 1 year, as you rightly say, is not.
No,
You
the
can say.
frequency is the more the better. Because to start with, the more number of audits you have, you start stabilizing your process or improving your process. So initially you can have more, and later on you can taper it down as appropriate. Or maybe some departments can be left out if you feel that those departments are doing well, and you can concentrate more on the departments which are doing bad or which are not meeting the metrics. So earlier, the more the better, and even MRMs, even the more is better. And also it is better if some outsider is part of your MRM or doing the audit, so that he is not biased. You can call an outsider and getting it done. And you should be very strict on your MRMs, and whoever is responsible and accountable has to be made accountable, and he should see that the data improves or the metrics improve. You cannot blame the quality person and ask him why what is going wrong.
Okay, sir. Last question I have regarding effectiveness. You talk that effectiveness should be there because all with the system we follow, everything we do is for the effectiveness. So you talk about the effectiveness. So effectiveness is with respect to organization goals or with respect to customer satisfaction and customers
Both.
delight.
Both. First, effectiveness with respect to the goals of the organization. Goals, that is your vision, mission statement. Is it meeting those requirements? Is it meeting the requirements of your QMS? Is it meeting the requirements of your metrics and KPIs, what you have set for each department? And meeting the requirements of customer satisfaction, what you have captured, customer satisfaction or customer complaints. Effectiveness is everywhere throughout the organization for all the process and sub-process metrics. Wherever you have defined the metrics, effectiveness has to be shown. That is why the more the metrics, the better. So in that case, that sense, don't keep on having metrics for every your process are stabilized. Have some more metrics, additional metrics added to that. Don't start with 15 or 20 metrics or KPIs in the beginning. It's very difficult to monitor.
So slowly you have to increase the number of KPIs and matrices.
Yeah, gradually keep on increasing the KPIs once the system is getting stabilized.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think I don't see any more question in the chat box as well, and no hand raised is also there. So thank you very much for your nice presentation. It was very good presentation, some nice cartoons and some good videos as well. Particularly that video of Atto was very nice, and it was not only for the system or for the organizations, we can say customer satisfaction, but it is also important for our personal use as well. Thank you very much for the same
Yeah,
and your time.
don't worry about this one language, because it's Tamil, so it's not
Yes. No, but the
advocating any
English
language. It
translation
is
was
done.
there most of the time in the
Yeah, English translation was there. Right.
was there. So, and it was quite good explanation was there, so we can understand that as well. So thank you very much for your
Right.
nice presentation and support to us. It was second presentation we have done with you, and we are hopefully going for a few more in future as well. So thank you very much for your support and your time. Thank you very much for all the participants for participating it. We will be uploading this video recording on YouTube maybe late night today. So you can enjoy it if you have missed it, some of the part of it. So thank you very much, sir. Once again, I thank you and I
Okay.
take your leave. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.